Gemma here on our Learn to Draw and Paint for Free lessons. Hope you are all doing really well. So today we are talking about task 4. So don't worry if you haven't done any of the other tasks and this is your first one. Grab some pencils, grab your sketchbook, and we'll make a start with our graphite still life, which is task number 4. So while everyone just refreshes their page and joins us, let's just recap what we have been doing. We've been looking at still life for a number of weeks now because we've been trying to practice putting our tonal range onto our objects. So we started with the universal forms, we then went on to charcoal. Now charcoal we spent quite a long time on building up different techniques on how to use that media. So we were doing a lot of blending, lots of realistic drawing techniques to get that tonal range onto our shapes, and we also talked about composition and things like that. Well, today task 4 is still a still life, but we're going back to graphite. So I've got my range of pencils. So we did cover that initially. We went through why it's good to have such a range of graphite pencils, and it's mainly to do with getting the full tonal range onto your work, because the softer the pencil, the darker the tone you'll get. So I've got a really soft pencil here, an 8B. I've also got a 4B and a 6B, or is it a 2B? I've picked out a few. So I've got a 2B, a 4B, a HB, and I've got a 2H to get in those really light tones as well. So quite a hard pencil is a 2H and a 4H. So we're going back to just using plain white paper, because I've used a lot of brown paper and coloured papers when it comes to charcoal, because I like to get in the white chalk and the white charcoal to get the highlights. But today with our still life, our highlights are the paper, because the paper's white. So wherever you see the brightest highlights, you want to try and keep the pencil off that area, because you want the highlights to remain the colour of the paper. Now, when you are doing blending with pencil, it can be incredibly time consuming, because you've got to really work into getting the shapes and the form right on your shapes. Some people do revert to smudging and using their fingers to smudge graphite pencil. I tend not to. You need a lot of control when you're doing that. You can use your smudge sticks like what we had when we were doing our charcoal, so you can only really smudge those softer pencils, the darkest ones like your 6Bs, but it can get messy very quickly. So I would say just keep your pencils incredibly sharp the whole time and just really carefully work into it. Now you might have spent a lot of time on your charcoal, I understand, so you might want a quicker technique. So today what I want to demonstrate to you is some different mark making techniques to experiment with what you can actually do with your graphite media, because you can do very lovely blended work, very realistic, as you probably see all over Google and all different examples with using graphite pencils. But let's go on to mark making. Now with the pencils you don't have to blend as in a really smooth way like we did with charcoal. There's lots of other things you can do. If I hold this a bit closer, can you see that that's more like cross hatching? So it's mark making to build up the sense of tone and your full tonal range. So we'll do a bit of cross hatching so I can show you really quick. It's much quicker, and as you can see you can get your full tonal range. It really does test your knowledge of the form of the shape you are drawing, because those lines have to go in the direction of the shape. So I'll show you that. So I'm just going to start with some simple fruit. Okay, I do have a pepper as well, so something like that is great because there's lots of form to it. There's going to be lots of texture as well. So mark making is really good for getting ideas down on a page maybe. I mean, you can do your final piece in this, it could be your style, but you could use it for more like just checking where tone is. So very quick sketch, you could sketch out a still life for example and work out where all those tones are by just doing cross hatching, and then you could go on to a final one if you did want to do all of those soft blended tones. But I really like this technique. It adds a bit of character to your drawings. So you can set up a whole still life. I'll just show you one fruit on its own to start with, just so you can see how this technique works. So let me just show you. I did do a quick sketch of my apple. So I've got it here, nice light, nice natural light, which we've talked about before, and I've sketched the outline. So with I might start with a HB, so a bit of a medium hardness pencil, okay, just to maybe get in some mid tones. Now you can see I've already started a little bit by starting my cross hatching by just drawing on where those tones are. Now my light is directly in the middle. You can probably see the light on the side of the apple here, but for me that's pretty much straight on. So I've got tones coming from both sides of this apple. So I'm just starting with my mid-tone to build those in. And if I hold this a bit closer, can you see I'm just using lines? And can you see they're curved? Because the apple is curved. So if you were to draw cross hatches going straight to begin with, or vertical or horizontal, you would make your shape quite flat. Okay, so it's all about, when you're shading objects like this, is to make sure your lines, your dominant lines, are always going in the direction. And you can see when you start to then go in the opposite way, again it's curving this direction as well, you'll start to build up some tone. So just keep going. So I'm curving each side like that. This bit's curving here. I'm just building up. Children having a nice time outside. Curving round and round. So I'm just building that. Now with cross hatching, you want to kind of go in the other directions too. Okay. Now I'm going to put this back because I want to see my apple. Because you want to keep always looking at your object. So can you see? So this is just mid-tone, as you can see. I haven't got too much. I've got another curve coming in here. Now it goes lighter, so I want to keep the page white in this middle section, because that's obviously where the highlight is hitting the apple. I've got another shine up here, so I want to keep this little bit here white too. So I'm just building it up, just cross hatching. So there are lines going in all different directions. And as I say, your dominant lines you want going curved to not lose the shape of your apple. So once you've got all those curved lines in all the different directions, and you've kind of worked out where all those curves and things are on your shape, we can now start adding some darker tones. So now I'm going to change my pencil. So let's go, I'll go straight to a 6B, because now you'll see much easier to start adding tone now. So all different directions. Just keep cross hatching those lines in all directions, obviously making it, just going to define the edge a little bit here. The lines are going to be so close together where it's its darkest, obviously the lines are almost touching. So can you see? So it's building it up. It's building it up towards the middle. So I can go around this side too. So just keep those lines curved. That's what's important, to not make your shape go flat. And it is curved around here. But it's getting lighter, so I'll save that for a lighter pencil. I have got some darker tones as well at the top here. And then I've got another shine here because the light is hitting it there. Okay, so you get the idea. I'm building it up. Now I'm going to go to an 8B. I've got the top of my stalk here is pretty dark, and it's very dark in this section too. So let's just get them even darker, these curves here. Now, it's a bit white in the middle here, so that's when you can get, try not to then just press lighter with your pencil, then try and change it up a bit. So I'm going to change my pencil to a 2H so I can get those lighter tones in without putting too much of a dark tone there that I didn't want there. So there we go, so it's coming together. And because all these lines are curved, so there's a lot more to work into it, but you can see it coming together, can't you? So I'll put a dark tone because there's a lot of shadow under here, and it'll give it a bit of a place. Now if you keep these crosshatch lines very straight, then you'll quickly see the difference in having a flat surface like the table underneath your apple, and the apple being curved. It will look flat. Again, just crosshatch. I'm just getting some shadow underneath. See? So all different directions, and then you can obviously get your table in as well. So there you go. So that's just what I wanted to show you. It's much quicker, and then you don't have to worry about blending so much. It's just, it gives it a bit of character. It shows that you understand the form because you can put all the curves on. With something like a pepper, this is a great exercise because obviously you've got lots of different curves going into one another. So you can see on my other example with the pepper, you've got more curves to think about and more shadow to think about. If it is hard to see shadow when you are doing an observation, I would take a photo, I might have mentioned this before, of your object and turn it black and white on your, on your camera phone, as something as simple as that. And then you can see all those different tones, maybe a bit easier. So give that a go so you can see, because sometimes when things are coloured, I know some people find it difficult to see where those darkest tones are. So get a black and white image of what you're looking at, and then you can refer to that as well, just to see really where those dark tones are. So what was I saying? Oh yeah, with the pepper, so you've got lots of different curves that you can work with. You could get even more creative and challenge yourself even more by slicing the pepper up. So that's really exciting because you've got lots of depth then, haven't you, going into the pepper, lots more curves, because you're going to have the roundness of the outside and then the concave angles going into the pepper as well. So that's a great one to have a go at doing form, and with cross hatching as well. It's not just cross hatching, there's lots more. On the blog you'll see I've got a whole resource on all the different types of mark making. There's stippling, for example, which is dots, so you can build a tone purely out of dots, and the closer together those dots are, the more tone. Really good for you when you're using ink. If you've got a ballpoint pen, you want to use ink instead to experiment with tone. So stippling, time consuming, but it does have a really cool effect. So that's cross hatching, but you can do any sort of texture. So this is good as well if you've got, say, the skin of a lemon or an orange. Some people find that really difficult. So you can see I was getting some texture into my pepper here. If I hold it a bit close, see, it's more like squiggly lines to get texture into it. So so that's literally almost like figure of eights, so just all over. So there's lots you can do with a pencil, because you can really show all that texture without the need for it to be just totally blended and smooth, because as you know, you can see from this apple, it isn't. There's lots of texture on there, there's lots of pattern, so you can get that into your drawing much easier if you're much looser with your lines. Holding the pencil further back as well might loosen you up a bit, so you're not as constricted when you're doing your sketches. So I just wanted to show you those because graphite doesn't have to be time consuming. It can be, and it can look beautiful, but you can also have a lot of character in your drawing by doing mark making. So take a look at the blog and have a look at the resource, because there's lots of other exercises. And then with your still life Think about doing a range of forms again. So think about having something of all different sizes as well. So a tall shape, a medium shape, some smaller shapes. We talked about rule of odds. An odd number of objects will make your still life more interesting, because the viewer, you know, when you're looking back at it, you won't be pairing up the items on the page. It will just make it more nice to look at, you know. So we talked about that before. So have a think about that, and with your cross hatching, try that but on all the different universal forms as well. That's why I'd encourage you to have all different shapes as well. Okay, so do something that's a bit of a cube, do a bottle, so you've got a cylinder in there, an apple or something like that, you've got the sphere. So have a think and look at your objects and think, is there a range of texture, is there a range of heights, is there a range of form? And then that will really help you to practice shading and putting those tones onto these real shapes. But yeah, try mark making if you feel that blending is really time consuming and you've done that with charcoal and you want to just mix it up a bit. So good luck with it. So that's task 4, a still life in graphite. Feel free to upload your work. I can't wait to see it to our Facebook group and show everyone what you've been doing. I'll give you some feedback on there, and then yeah, we can move on. So this was one of our last tonal drawings. So as I said, doesn't matter if you've only just joined us, join in with some graphite drawing. We'll go on to a final observation drawing next week, and then we'll start to think about adding colour and going on to portraits and other areas of painting and drawing that you might be interested in. So yeah, keep in touch, get involved, and thanks for tuning in. Bye.